is Mona Tavakoli. Thanks so much for checking me out in Drum Magazine. I am here today to share with you some ideas about how to adapt your experience on the drum set to the cajon. So I was a drum set player starting from when I was 11 years old, and I started playing the cajon when I was 19 at UCLA in a flamenco dance class. And quickly I realized it would be so cool to use the cajon in my pop band called Raining Jane. So once we brought the cajon into a pop situation, we realized I needed to be playing different kinds of grooves, 4/4s, 3/4s, and that bass sound would be so essential in transitioning from drum set to cajon. So I wanted to share with you how I was able to do that. And this cajon is actually my signature model. It's called the MT Box. What I wanted really was a nice bass, a nice kick tone that I could get, and the way that I get it is by basically hitting the middle to low part of the cajon with my full palm as though I'm high-fiving the cajon. So I'm pulling the sound out of the surface down here, like that. And I also want to make sure I got a really nice crisp snare drum. So I make sure that I have 4 strings inside this cajon to help amplify that crisp snare. And the way that I get the snare sound out of this cajon is by using the top half of my fingers here, and again, pulling the sound out, pulling the sound out. And I like to keep my hands a little bit separated, my fingers a little bit separated when I'm getting the bass tone and getting the snare tone there. So I've got a bass and a snare. Now, a way I was able to get a hi-hat sound was by putting a brush in my left hand and using a traditional grip. So here I am using the Wiretap Woody made by our good friends at Vader. And this is a great stick for a drum set player who wants to get a brush sound because you get that drumstick feel and size. I'm using a traditional grip here because ergonomically it just makes the most sense and it's the most comfortable. And I'm able to use the top corner here to get a nice 8th note, a nice swishy 8th note. If I were to create a really basic rock groove on the cajon, it's creating a hi-hat sound here, getting my bass drum sound here, and a snare sound here. So I'm using my right hand for both bass and snare, and my left hand for hi-hat. So I've also got some things on my feet that are additional accessories that help sort of round out that acoustic drum set sound. And on my right foot here, I've got a tambourine. And on my left foot here, I have some North Indian classical dancing bells called gungaroos. And these can also be used to get a nice bright hi-hat sound. So using basically the same way I would use a hi-hat, I'm using my left foot to create 8th notes there. You're already using all 4 limbs when you play the drum set. You can also do that on the cajon. The last piece of it for me when I was trying to figure out how do I use just the cajon for a whole gig was how do I get a nice tom sound. So I started experimenting with my foot, pushing my foot up and down the front plate to bend the pitch of the wood, and I was able to create sort of like a rolling tom. So if I'm just keeping my hands here and going from high to low, so same way going low to high, keeping a consistent 16th note pattern here, and in the middle of a groove, I could just roll my foot up and down and I could create the toms. And I like to call that move the cricket. Get it? Okay. All right, so if I'm playing a groove, so these brushes are a really, really good way to mix up your sound too. Let's say, for example, I'm playing a nice 3/4 groove. I can keep just And that's just now using the traditional grip on both hands. So it's unconventional to do that, but I like to call it the double traditional, which is double the fun. This nice brush tone on the wood creates sort of like a shaker experience too. I'm keeping both of my fingers up high up on the stick, but if I want to get a nice bass tone, I can pull my right hand ring finger underneath the brush to then create a bass tone. So if I'm and all that is, again, is putting the ring finger onto the wire brush, and then I can get a bass tone and also get the nice swish of the brush. Vader also has these awesome Cajon brushes, and this can help you create a bass tone and a swish sound all in one, which, because it's a heavier, denser brush, we can go right for that bass tone without having to put our ring fingers in the mix. And here, I like to keep my posture really high up, and you just have a little bit more attack with these Cajon brushes. All right, so we've got the bass tone, we've got the snare tone. We can totally use the brushes for a hi-hat, or using our left foot for a hi-hat. And then we can also use the middle of the drum. I'm Mona T. Thanks for checking it out.